Right, today I'm in Shropshire with Andy Holding. Thanks very much, Andy, for agreeing to talk to us today.
No problem, Simon.
Right, let's get straight into it. How would you describe your profession? What are you?
Well, by trade, yes, professional gambler, of course. But in the last few years, there's other layers attached to that overall title. Journalist, courtesy of my odds checker tipping site. Do a bit of broadcasting as well for William Hill Radio. So it all comes under the one umbrella, really. Racing pundit. But I like to think to myself that I'd be standalone as a pro punter. If I didn't have all those outside interests, then that's basically my main foundation, my main core. I've made a living through betting since I turned 30, when I decided to go it alone, as it were, and work for myself. And like to think I've done a relatively good job of it up to now.
Okay, so you've survived as a professional punter for a couple of decades, without giving your age away. What's your age?
Well, I met a guy many years ago, and he sort of got me into going into in depth a little bit more into the speed, characteristics of horses, how fast they could run. If you watch athletics, on the TV, the one thing you see up on the corner of your screen is a timing gun. You don't get that on a racetrack, which is bizarre, really, because the core factor and faculty of racing is to find out which horse can run the fastest from A to B. So I think that an edge is very much looking into the mechanics of a horse, how fast they can run, what makes horses run faster than other horses, under what conditions they will run faster than the horses, i.e. tracks or grounds or what have you. So I basically, after I met this guy, I wanted to get down into the nitty gritty and actually work out a way of rating horses via speed, hence speed figures now, which I use my own speed figures, and they've very much been they've just basically transformed the way I bet, the way I think about a race, the way I look at a race, post-race and pre-race analysis. So it's been a huge kind of fact-finding mission along the way.
Okay, so do you trust the official figures, or do you do your own timings?
I do my own timings. I've got database basically of all the standard times for all the tracks, English and Irish. I say there's two other guys that help me along the way, Sam Turner and Andy Bate. They also help me collect all the times. But basically the actual number crunching, as it were, doing the sectional times for the jumps, doing the sectional times for the flat racing as well, that all comes part of the studying. So I'll do all that, and the overall times. Like I say, we have a core, we have a database of all our interpretation of what the standard times on each given track should be. We don't really trust the other ones that are out there. We feel as though they're very unreliable. They're nowhere near what they should be. Like there's one at Wolverhampton, for instance. The standard time for the mile at Wolverhampton, the track record's got nowhere near the standard. I think it's 1:46 the standard, and the track record's 1:46.43. So that tells you that can't be right. So they can be very misleading. I think they can skew your figures. So I think once you've got your own, you begin to trust your own, and they become more reliable as time goes on.
So I suppose you also reevaluate the official going as well, with the times that you get.
That's it. That's basically what you do. You're looking for a going correction. You basically take the average. If there's 6 races on the card, 7 races, whatever, you take the best 3 times in comparison to the standard times, and that gives you a going correction. It tells you basically whether that ground that day was speeding them up by a certain amount of seconds per mile or slowing them down. And then once you've done that, then you can use that as the basis for the rest of your figures on the day, and then you go back through and look at the historical times and what they've achieved in the past, and like I say, it gives you an idea of what kind of achievement they actually did on the day.
So what would be the most important sectional of a race, or does it vary?
Well, fundamentally the last 3 furlongs would be. You ask any race analyst, a lot of people do like percentage times, the come home times, as it were, from 3 out, from 2 out. It tells you how fast they were running at the end in comparison to the overall. It tells you whether they've gone slow early and they were speeding up at the end, or they've gone really quick and they were slowing down. But I think just importantly is knowing how quick they've gone in the early part of the race. A lot of people will fast forward their analysis onto the end and just look at the last 2 or 3 furlongs. Well, I do think the first 2 or 3 furlongs is just as important, where they are in a race after a couple of furlongs. Did the draw impact where they were? Track position is also key. So I do think, no, I don't think you could just pin it down to saying, oh yeah, the last 2 furlongs are the be all and end all, because that doesn't tell you the whole narrative of the race. I think you need to know everything that's gone on from the start, whether they've gone too fast, too slow, whether that's suited horses coming off the pace, whether that's suited front runners, obviously they've gone slowly. So I think you need to know everything, start to finish. But if you pin me down and said, right, Andy, what is the number one criteria you look for, then of course you'd have to say the last 2 or 3 furlongs, or the last 2 or 3 jumps in a national hunt race.
So those races where they're off and they sort of stand there for 30 seconds, that could skew your figures fairly badly?
Well, they can do. Luckily nowadays the actual timings are based on when they actually go through the line, almost like an imaginary gun, as it were. But you do have to be careful with a lot of national hunt races. Obviously they are very slowly run. Jockeys are jockeying for position in the early stages. They're not truly run. The ones that I make the most money on, and we'll get to that a little bit later, are the ones whereby the overall time is really fast from start to finish. So you know it's reliable piece of form, because horses have had to run fast throughout all the way. So it sorts the wheat out from the chaff. And the other important thing then is the back end of that race as well, the sectional times. If the sectional times also tell you that they are the fastest on the card, as well as the overall time being really good, now you're really in business, because these horses can obviously operate at a very high class level. And I think going forward those races are very good when it comes to the championship races at the Cheltenham Festival and all the big festivals like your Royal Ascots, your Galways, your Punchestowns. A lot of the horses that I make the most money on at these big festivals have historically, previously, during that season, run a very fast time. So I know once they've done it once, under that environment, they will do it again. So that's basically my mindset, and that's how I like to think I'll get a bit of an edge on most punters when it goes into the bigger meetings.
It's interesting you talk about Galway and Punchestown, because you were known in sort of certain circles as the Irish guru. Is there not enough English racing to study? Why'd you delve into the Irish and even specialise in it?
Yeah, like I say, as a pro punter, you're always looking for an angle, you're always looking for an edge, you're trying to bet against the herd. If there's a 6-4 favourite and everyone believes it should be 6-4, then largely speaking, you're not really getting much value there, because everyone can set their own price. What you are looking for is a certain pool of horses that not many punters are looking at. So quite a long time ago I thought, well, there didn't appear to be that much data or research done on Irish racing. There didn't seem to be many judges out there that were talking about Irish racing. It wasn't in the sort of the psyche of most people. So I decided to sort of specialise on it, because I felt as though if I did or applied my rules about sectional timing and overall times, it would throw obviously a huge amount of winners that nobody else is looking at. If you've got, say there's 200 professional punters out there and 190 of them are looking at UK racing and only 10 of us are looking at Irish racing, then consequently you should have more scraps left on your plate. So I was finding that I was getting a really big edge by spotting the value, spotting horses that were overpriced based on my time figures that nobody else was looking at. And obviously the Irish bookmakers weren't pricing them up. Sorry, the English bookmakers weren't pricing the Irish horses up based on time figures. They were basing them up on pure form. And yes, of course, that's an important part of race betting, but I rely more heavily on the time figures, and that is definitely not incorporated into a morning price. So that's where I was getting my edge. So obviously Irish racing was a fundamental reason why I decided to make that one of my specialist subjects.
So at what point did you realise that you did have a talent that you could make a living from?
I suppose it came from a young age, really. Ever since I've been force-fed racing by my dad. He used to take me racing as a young boy. I mean, I used to go into betting shops way back in the day when there was no pictures. I mean, you just had the commentary. So I've always had an understanding of racing at races and watching horses run. So I think part of it is a feel. You get a feel for a good horse. You've seen a good horse in the past, and you kind of you just know when you've come across something that's just outside the norm. So I think that's part of it. And as the years have gone on, like I say, I've become a little bit more scientific. I've delved into the mechanics of how horses can operate, what makes them tick, what tracks that they that you can rely on them to run to their very best. So, like I say, it's probably around about when I was late 20s, early 30s. I thought, I'm wasting my time sort of doing an ordinary job. I've got a sneaky feeling I could do this as a living. I think I'm good enough now to walk the tightrope without a safety net and have a go at it on my own and see if my judgment is as good as what I think it is.
Yeah, now a lot of people watching think that professional gambling is to nick a phrase from a race was booking money without work. How much effort goes into each day's racing before you even have a bet?
Huge amount. You wouldn't believe how much goes into it. If you're going to do it properly, that is, and not cut corners, and I think that's another fundamental thing you need to think about if you are considering doing it as a living. I mean, I'm up at 6:30, 7 o'clock most days. I spend probably a good 3 or 4 hours in the morning just analysing the previous day's racing. You need to get that into your locker. You need to obviously go through what happened before historically to make sure you've got a clear mind and you know what's going to happen in the future. And then obviously when the afternoon racing comes around, you're either still doing your time stuff from yesterday, or you actually get involved in looking at the day's racing itself. But yeah, the whole process during the day would probably take, with breaks in between. Luckily, I've got a dog to help me out with a few of the breaks, morning and afternoon. Otherwise, I would be here in front of the computer all day. But I'd probably say about 6, 7, 8 hours a day from start to finish. So it's a long day, and you certainly know you've done a day's work after it.
Okay, well, you're looking at time. So are you looking for horses to come out, or are you looking at each race on its merits?
Yeah, I kind of, once I've got a very good time figure, and I believe that the race in question is going to work out, I start to look for horses straight away that have finished down the field in that race. Let's say there's a 20 running novice hurdle at Exeter, and I think this race is really good. So let's say that the horse that finished 7th comes out, and he's the first horse to represent that form line. As long as I believe he's run to what I consider a fair standard next time out, i.e. finishes in the first 3 or 4 in another similar race, or perhaps a slightly better one, then I start to get excited about that particular race. So I pretty much would follow most horses that are running out of that really good time figure. Not everyone, I mean, you wouldn't back the whole 20, but if I've then gone back and watched the replays and I've upgraded horses that have run well from the back of the field, if I've upgraded horses that have forced the pace and then just slightly dropped away because they couldn't keep up, I will then make a note of that and then bet them accordingly next time out. So I'm basically following races and race patterns and the times of their standalone performances. I wouldn't necessarily just point at one horse and say, right, he's the one I'm going to follow out that race. Sometimes I could follow 4, 5, 6 depending on how I see fit. And again, that's where I've made most of my money over the years, is recognising a good race by doing the overall and the sectional times, and then making it pay by backing them when they're the wrong price in the next races.
Okay, and everything you do is pretty high tech, but I understand there's a bit of low tech in your form study still. The old trusty racing post weekender pull
Absolutely, yeah. Exhibit A, as we've got here. Yes, I've got all the databases here in front of me. I've got the spreadsheets that I use, as you can see there. That was a race on Sunday at Punchestown. Luckily, actually, the horse that was the top 3 ratings on the time figures that we keep, Riders on the Storm, as you can see, had the top 3 times. So that's my starting point for each day. But then once I've actually done all my analysis, yeah, as you can see here, good old racing weekender, which I've been having now for donkey's years. It just, as a sort of prehistoric way of doing it, just keeps my time figures, keeps the sectionals I have in there, and any little notes and bullet points that I have along the way. So yeah, integral part of the week, the weekender.